And today's guest on editing, we have Lynne Stiegler. Where are you, Lynne?
I'm in Kingman, Arizona, and it's just about dawn here.
It is here too. It's now that we're getting toward in April. I noticed at 2 a.m. that you could only see a few stars because the night sky is lightening, is getting lighter and lighter. Give it another month, and we will be daylight all the time. You will be able to see no stars. So
Oh,
this is when people say, "Hey, I want to see the aurora. Can I in the summer?" Oh, no, you can't see the aurora in the summer. It's there, but you can't see it because it's light. So that's March and October are prime aurora viewing times, and this March, it really wasn't that bad, except for the days where it was like minus 20 or minus 30. But you could, it was clear when. And the thing is, in the fall and in the spring, when it's coldest, that's when it's clear. Okay, nobody can
uh,
see. Nobody can see
yeah, that's
Lynne.
weird.
Yeah. That's an issue because Lynne can see Lynne and Lynn's camera, but for some reason it's not feeding into the feed. So we're going to just go with the blue screen. Oh, almost deaf, only mostly dead. But Lynn's here. She can answer. She can hear you. I can hear her. All is good. So just understand. Somebody put a note that yes, we know, and we're going to press forward. Lynne will be blue. Today is a blue day for Lynne.
Actually, I'm wearing blue, so that works.
Yeah. So and in the background, also a disclaimer: we may swear on this show. Lynne, I've
Ooh.
been working on her long and hard, but still, something may escape. So or Mark screaming from the background.
Oh, he's not up yet.
That's true. Arizona, it's 7:03. What are you, are stoned? So here we are. But I am finishing a book today that I will then send to Lynne first thing tomorrow. So this is us. Lynne edits about 90% of the stuff I do, and the other 10% is legacy work that I funnel through a different editor to not overwhelm Lynne because she does a lot of editing. How many books have you edited this year, Lynne?
So far, about 55.
So only 55. Hang on just a second. Let me update this. Lynne Stiegler is the blue screen.
You can just put up a cartoon or, Rita Hayworth or
There we
whatever you
go.
want.
Yeah, I should do that, but I'm not sure if it would cut your mic off if I inserted a cool graphic like the picture on your keyboard's profile. Just put that up instead. But I don't know how to do that, and I don't want to lose you.
Oh, I
No,
should give you the one from when I was 3 with the lovely zebra pants. That was great.
I can't stand because I work from home, and this is me now. I'll try to shave today as well. Um, the So 55 works. You've worked. How many different authors?
This month, this month alone, I've done 4 already.
Okay.
So it just depends. Um, LMBPN has gone to a curious phenomenon, which is we're producing what we call omnis or mega books, where we're doing 3 books in one. So it's 120 to 180,000 words at a time. And so most times I will leave those until they're due, basically, and then I will do all 3 of them at once. But that hasn't happened yet, so I can safely say, let's see, what is this? The 7th? So
Yeah.
I've done 6 authors already this month.
Okay. And do you break those up? 180,000 word book? That's actually 3 books or 2
Yes,
books?
that's actually 3 books. Well, for me, it's 3 books. For the reader, it's a seamless experience.
Okay. Now, what are your bona fides? The like coming to LMBPN as the senior editor, you managing an editing team. But how long have you worked in editing?
About 3 years now. And then there in this particular stint, and then there was a gig for Bain Books back in the 90s where I worked for them for a couple of years.
Okay.
Um, I've read since I was like basically 4 years old, and I'm extremely retentive with rules and patterns mostly. And so between reading 10 to 12 books a week, etc., one gets a sense of what is correct. Certainly for our genre, being broadly fiction, and since most of my reading and love is science fiction and military fiction and urban fantasy, I kind of got a real good feel for be how they should sound, which
Yeah.
is a little bit different than, say, the Mayor of Casterbridge, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, 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 um, so that's basically how I got into it. Is my husband is a Baen author, Mark Stiegler. Shameless plug, his new book just came out, and
That's
he
right.
got nominated for the Prometheus Award. He's
I
a
saw that.
finalist.
I saw
He's a
that.
finalist
But the new Brain Trust is out. I think last week it came out, right?
on the second, yeah.
Okay.
So the fifth and final book of the trilogy.
Yep. I've done that.
So yes. So anyway, he was working with Baen at the time, and they asked me to do some editing for them, and I kind of rapidly went from proofreader to copy editor and then to developmental, and I don't know, I see patterns. That's all I can say.
And and
And that's one of the reasons I edit so fast. I'm considered to be very fast in the business, and so it's because I see patterns. It's purely genetics. Thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. You know.
and uh, Lynne has done a great job for us. And one thing she adds is significantly adds consistency. The Cartharian Gambit, we talked about that yesterday rather extensively. Shameless plugs with Kevin J. Anderson. It is in that universe, just the science fiction section, which is started with actually Michael Anderle's first book, is, oh, geez, 70, 90 books. So across all of those, Lynne has brought that consistency. So this is one thing. When you search for an editor, you want to find one that you're going to hang with for quite a while to make sure that you're consistent in capitalization. When I talked with the Daily News Miner, I said that I am very fluid in my capitalization, and Lynne helps clean that up. My other editors also look for that because they understand me. So looking for an editor, I'm sure we have a lot of new authors out there that don't have an editor yet or had one and had a bad experience. What is something that they can look for to make sure they have a better relationship?
You want to find an editor who doesn't say my way or the highway, or have an attitude that they know it all and they're basically patting you on the head. That's not something you want. You want an editor who respects your work and is more interested in preserving your voice than necessarily having it absolutely correct. So let's face it, what we do is fiction. It's entertainment. And so I could care less about the Chicago Manual of Style. If a dramatic scene doesn't need a comma, which inserts a pause, you don't put one there, and you don't make it go into the author's work. So in other words, you want somebody who totally respects your work. You are ultimately, it is your book. I am there to make you look as good as you can look. So
And some people, I will add that some people are really bad and they need a lot of lessons in grammar and consistency. But my voice is, well, your voice is jumping between tenses and making it unreadable. So you need to work on you get a voice coach is what you can tell them. And so understand when an editor makes an edit, what is the reason behind the edit? And if it's making sure that your text is tense correct, not switching tenses back and forth and getting tenses wrong with your verbs. Just understand that's different than taking your voice and
yes.
A dialogue. How do you approach dialogue?
Dialogue does have fairly, well, okay, I'm a little bit of a dialogue Nazi, as is my co-editor, for whom I'll give a shameless plug, Judah Rain, who's just a godsend. And we restrict our dialogue verbs to being ones that actually have to do with speaking. So blah, 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 comma, she sighed is not a dialogue verb to us. So, and we see it a lot. She laughed, she breathed, anything that doesn't actually have to do with speaking, I would
Yeah,
tend to edit in. I would terminate the dialogue and I would turn it into another sentence.
yeah,
So,
or a period instead of a comma, a
correct.
small letter following she said, make it a period, quotation and quote, and then capital sighing or some other thing that is a action oriented with the character and not about a dialogue tag. So that's one
Correct.
thing that I learned early from my first editor, who edited my first 2 million words, and she uh, uh, she adheres to the Chicago Manual of Style and helped teach me a lot of the elements that weren't associated with capitalization or comments. And I did train her, despite what the Chicago Manual says, that marine is always capitalized, unless we're talking marine life out in the ocean. That's something completely different. But any marine, the soldier of the sea, as it may be, is capitalized. Period. Non-negotiable. Don't make me fire you. And
Absolutely.
that was the only fireable offense in working with me. She could ask any question, but it's like, don't ever try to. Please, just make this easy on yourself and me. So, that was a one thing, and where I put my foot down. But whenever I got a text back, this is me, and I have to say I've grown a little bit lazy with Lynne in that I'll check her comments. We use Word with track changes. Lynne also uses Google Docs for some of our other clients, but Word with track changes. I get a document back from Lynne. I will go through all of the comments and address those comments, fixing the text itself, and then generally I'm going to browse and check some things, and only after that I accept all changes and stop tracking. I don't go through initially, like probably my first 3 million words. I went through every single change trying to learn and realized that I just should just give up on commas, and did. and,
Yes.
and and capitalization, I could see where global changes were made, and I'm like, okay, hey, let's get that right. Easy day. So,
Let me
uh,
make three comments to what we've just said, which went by rather quickly. One is, if you have any interest in learning more about how to punctuate dialogue and how to work with dialogue, my co-editor Judah and I have developed well, it's mostly Judah, developed a document called Dances with Dialogue. And if you want to get hold of it, I'm happy to give it to you. And you can reach me on the Carthurian Gambit Facebook uh, uh, group, or you can reach me in 20 books also, and I will be happy to get it to you. It's uploadable.
can,
Um,
can we upload that to the files section of 20 books?
yeah, sure.
Hey, Elaine, can you comment on our feed here saying we're going to upload that document, working dangling dinos dialogue, or whatever the title was. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Exactly. Dances with Dialogue.
Dances with no dangling dinos. Okay, dances with
But I kind of
dialogue.
like that one better.
That's it. Well, it fits my brand better, I think. But um, dances with dialogues. We will upload that after we're done to the files section of 20 books to 50K. So thanks, Lynne, thanks for that. That's important. A lot of people, and Michael Anderle especially, live and die by dialogue. Action scenes are cool and they tie things together, but it really comes down to the snippy, snarky, intelligent, philosophical dialogue and conversations between characters.
Yes. And then, oh boy, there was something else that you said that I was going to speak to, but you and comments and all sorts of things like that. First of all, you have to understand that some of the comments that go back and forth between me and Craig have something to do with wah ha ha, and when he makes a particularly good one. And then he and I have this little tradition where he does very choppy staccato sentences. I combine them using a comma and a conjunction, and then he blithely ignores me. So it all works very, very well.
I
So we both get our jollies with that.
and Lynne edits my books very quickly because I do my damnedest to give her a clean text. I hate when I first got my first narrative back. I said, well, how many changes do you think there were? 20, 30? And the editor said, no, there were 2,000. I'm like, 2,000? I'm a lawyer. I write good. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, real good. So anyway, 2000, I went through it. And I'm like, okay, I see all of these and the consistency of these mistakes and things like that, and learn. And I probably still have 1,000, 2,000, but very few of them are showstoppers where it's like, Jesus, this is really horrible.
they're tiny
A reader
tweaks in
won't
general.
understand this. Yeah,
Use a
yeah,
good one, Martelle.
yeah,
I think Judah's in my record was for a 65K book. We had over 20,000 errors.
yeah. Now that's doing your editor a disservice because it's taking them way longer than what they planned to take. So let's get back on track with finding an editor. If somebody's new, and we have an editor thread on Pimp Your Editing Service on 20 books to 50K, and
We do? How nice.
a lot of them will edit the first 500 words for free, so you can see how it works. And this is one of those things I would always do. If you're looking for an editor, please get a free sample and
Yes.
see what they're looking to change, or how they're tweaking your narrative. Because if you have a 500 word sample and they're changing some of the not just the style but the voice. I had somebody who was in love with contractions, and they made contractions that just didn't work for me, and I said I can't have this. So anyway, moving on, and we found editors that were more in line with what I wrote, because changing something to a contraction is, I'm not sure you want to do that as for an author. Yeah, you write how you write. Sometimes people write more the way they speak. But also keep in mind, if you're going to turn your book into an audiobook, you may your flowery language, your alliteration, some of the stuff are real tongue twisters. And
Yes.
a lot of readers, they will read out loud. Because how do I know you're reading to yourself? Because I can hear you. I mean, how many couples are going through that right now? Um,
Yes.
so they're reading out loud, and this is so if you're making stuff that's hard to read, there are too many books out there that are easy to read, that are great stories. So you're giving people a reason to stop reading. Very, very important. All right, hey, we've got a
Look,
question. How many?
yeah, of two of them, I was going to say, no, Elaine, that wasn't you. Calm down. And Hal makes a very, very good point. I have never in my life struck an author's passage. That's not my job. My job is to help, either depending on what you've asked me to do, to make that passage make sense, and then you and I will go back and forth and massage it, or I will send it back to you saying, I wonder how this will sound. I wonder if I wonder if a reader will get what you are trying to say here. And so that's a very good point. But my husband's favorite one is he got back an entire page with a red line through it that said stupid. And that was from Jim Bain. And how was he supposed to interpret that? And so, well, he figured it out because the book got published. But if I'm going to give you comments on or if I'm going to say something isn't quite what it should be, I will tell you why I think that. And
and
that's a very important thing with an editor. And then it's up to the author. Ultimately, it's your book.
I
So,
remember getting a comment back from Lynne, and it was exactly that. It was a passage, like a couple sentences. She says, "This goes nowhere. It doesn't move the plot forward. Please take a look at this." I looked at it. I'm like, "What the hell is that?" It ended mid sentence, and then I thought about it, and I have a pretty good memory on good days. And I'm like, "Oh, I know what happened. My dog came in, and I had to take her out, and we were outside for like an hour. When it came back in, I just started jamming on the next sentence. So a whole plot sub thread, wherever I was taking it, I had no idea. So I just deleted the whole paragraph, because, and this is Lynne's what Lynne provides beyond copy editing is she didn't just say, "Oh, hey, you need to end this sentence. You can't just leave midway through." Yeah, I can leave midway through, and I'm glad I did, since my dog has passed away. So, but I always, no matter where I was, I just stopped right then, and I would take my dog out for the 10 years she was with us. But the those kinds of things are beyond copy editing. That moves into a little bit of developmental editing, and also that's where you get your story. Some people, I've read thousands of science fiction books. I'm pretty comfortable with my story. I'm sure we could improve some things with developmental editing, but would we get back more than what we paid, especially with the working back and forth? And I say no. I get a mini part of it with my beta readers, my insider team. So I have a lot of people reading my stuff before it goes live. So I get that input that yes, they can understand the story. There's nothing weird. There's nothing that doesn't make sense or that turns them off, which is the big thing. I want them finished and say, hey, man, great story. I want to read the next story. Or, hey, I liked it. I want to read the next story. I don't need people to heap praise on me. I just don't want them to say, thanks, but I don't think I'm going to read any more of your shit. So that's the ultimate death knell with a K. So we don't want to see that. And that's what I shoot for. The very simple, hey, I liked it. Look forward to the next book. And if you look at my my reviews on Amazon, we don't talk on about reviews on 20 books to 50K, but if you look at my reviews, most of them say I can't wait for the next book or looking forward to the next book.
Yes, and let me tell you that two things before I get into answering Margaret Lashley's question. One is that you want your editor to have a problem where they have trouble editing versus reading the book. That's when you know your book is really good. And I have that trouble with Craig's books fairly frequently. So you'd have to sit yourself down and say, Lynn, you need to edit this, not read it. If you need to go read the end, do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm one of those. I freely admit it. I will read the end so that I can comfortably get through the book. So, okay, back to something Craig said. With the book that I had that had 20,000 errors in it, and this is going to go to Margaret Lashley's question. When an author gives me a book like that, I have to what I call get the undergrowth out so I can see the forest. And you're going to either pay me a hell of a lot because I'm so fast, I charge by the hour. So I don't charge by the word, or I'm going to quit because if I charge by the word because it's way too much work. Also, you're doing your story a disservice because your editor can only see it and I put "see" in quotes, for a certain amount of time. After that, we get blind to it as well. So we won't see your mistakes anymore because it's become part of the landscape, as it were. So you will do yourself a very great service if you put your book aside for a couple of days and then go back through it and read it out loud to yourself. And that was the other thing I wanted to get back to. When I'm editing, I'm actually reading it in my head for it to make sense. And since 90% of the LMBPN books go on audiobook,
yeah.
I'm always thinking about what that poor schmuck in traffic with horns blaring all around him, which of course isn't a problem at this exact moment in the time-space continuum. But that person cannot go back on that page and figure out what you meant. And it may be the most delightful language in the world. And if someone has a chance to actually concentrate on what you're saying, I'm sure they would be extremely entertained by it. But if there's even a hint that they can't get by the spoken word, you need to think about whether or not and I'm not going to say you need to take it out. I'm going to say you need to think about whether those words are worth putting in. Now, what will happen if I get a book that has 20,000 errors in it, or the more regular, and I love you to death, Craig, but your books usually run between 3,000 and 5,000.
Okay.
So,
because of
but
commas.
those are small. Those are tiny little tweaks, and they're commas, and they're not typos. They're not anything else. They're tiny little things, and as you say, none of them are showstoppers. Very rarely do I get a showstopper with you. So there are people for whom that's not true. But what will happen is if I see that fairly regularly from an author, I will start doing developmental editing for them, and this goes to Margaret Lashley's question. If you're paying someone for developmental editing, nobody's book is that good. So I'm going to, without knowing, and I don't know many other editors, so I can say I'm not dissing my colleagues because I have zero clue who my colleagues are. But my job is to make you the best you can be. So if all I'm doing is proofreading for you, that's not helping you. So you need to find a different editor. I mean,
Yeah.
unless that's what you explicitly asked me to do, and then I'm not your girl because I can't help but stick my little fingers in it and try and help you be better.
And that's developmental editing. That's your in-depth. Kate Pickford doesn't do that anymore, but she's done a number of videos on her own page. Friend Kate Pickford, and see her videos. I think I shared a couple in 20 books. I think she's made them public on YouTube, and those are talking about how do you make that hook? How do you increase the friction? How do you do these things that go to the basics of story that have nothing to do with copy editing or typesetting or proofreading? They go to the meat and potatoes of what keeps a reader reading your book. So look at those. Developmental editing. Lawrence Schoen asked the question. Let me pop that up real quick. If you aren't aware of, because this isn't your bag, baby, developmental editing, but I'm thinking I've seen prices $2,000 to $5,000 for a developmental edit. So you get what you pay for, but you got to make sure that this developmental editor is good. Kate Pickford was an exceptional one. She doesn't do that anymore, but there are other ones out there who are very, very good. The typical rate, it's a fair piece. It's a bit, because they read your story and to get the whole flavor, and then they go through and dissect it, and then they'll read it again. This is like a multiple engagement process. Some copy editors might charge a fair bit as well, but that's multi-pass. I don't need multi-pass with Lynne, because first I have my beta readers, my insider team. They read it, so that's what I use as my developmental edit. Lynne gives it the copy edit, and then it goes to a dozen proofreaders who hit it again, looking for those escapees who were able to dodge past Lynne's eyes, my insider team's eyes, and are still there, and we clean those up, and then we're ready to go live. So
We
that's
should say those proofreaders, by the way, are what we call our just-in-time reader team at LMBPN. And
yeah.
Craig may have his own separate assembly of those. I'm not sure. I know he has the beta reader team. Some of the names seem suspiciously familiar. It's just kind of odd. But in any case, those people are all volunteers. They're ours. You can't have them. They're amazing.
Yes.
So it is my honor and my pride that I don't leave them very many things that escape. I try, if I start seeing one every 10 or 15 pages, I feel like I haven't done my job, and I beat myself about the head and shoulders. So because I would rather have them have the enjoyment of the book than having to be finding errors that I should have found.
And I'm very proud that the JIT, and this is a voluntary effort. There's a number of them available, and when Lynne makes a book available with Kelly O'Donnell's help, and makes it available online, saying, "Hey, here's a book that needs JIT," and that's almost daily. LMBPN publishes a lot of books, and I think when people see my book, I think you get a number of signups very quickly, and it fills up, and I'm proud to say that they join so quickly because they like the story. They know it's going to be more of a pleasure read than work, because you don't want your proofreaders to become your editors.
Yep.
Fixing an item a page, item every, that takes them out of the story, and once again, it gives people reason to stop reading, and this goes to your proofreaders. You're going to turn them off if you're turning them into your editors. If you give them a clean text where they're catching something once every 50 pages, I think one every 10,000 words is the acceptable published typo rate for traditional publishing. I'd like to think that we can do better than that. I think I'm good for maybe two when we finally publish. That we might have two or three. I mean, sentences could be reworded, sure, but I'm talking a real typo where you say the instead of they, which is a very common thing because I type my Y finger doesn't hit press down as often and as well as it should. So that's a typo. That's simply we didn't press the key all the way. And
By the
sometimes
way,
those,
let's be careful with the word proofreaders, because paid proofreaders should be catching
yeah,
6 every page or 20 every page, or how many you've left them.
Oh, geez, you should pay those people a fortune if you're giving them ten typos a page.
Oh,
My,
darling, I could show you some things. But anyway, but when we're saying proofreaders, we're talking about our just-in-time reader team who goes through at the end. They are all volunteers.
yeah,
Lawrence, I have no idea. I worked for Bain and now I work for LMBPN. And so I've looked at the industry page, but I don't know what a developmental editor gets paid. Craig gave you a range. Um, so
yeah, it'll be and it's time consuming too. Understand. What Lynne gives us with LMBPN is a very, very quick turnaround. We tell her, hey, here's a book coming, and it's for me, it's about 2 weeks is all Lynne demands, is 2 weeks from the time I give it to her until it publishes. So this is, I mean, that's a very tight timeline for most editors, but this is a process that we've been working with for years now. And previously, I told my editor, my other editor, hey, I've got a book coming on this date, and I delivered on that date for the first 2 years. Here's the book I said I'd get to you on this date. And so she would, within the next week, get it done and get it back to me. So this is some things to feather your nest. Other ways, I mean, people say, well, I only work with this editor and she's not open for 3 months, so I'll get it then. All right. I mean, if that's what you want to do, I just can't see letting a book sit there and not earn money for 3 months. So I would work the business side a little differently to find an editor that can get you in their rotation a little better. But when you're first starting out, you take what you can get, and that's for me. I publish books without with me editing them, and as you say, as you heard Lynne, I write pretty well, and 3 to 5 thousand corrections in a 65, a soon to be 75,000 word text. The one I will give Lynne, I've already got 3,000 words. 6 a.m. I've got 3,000 words already. It's the very I'm to the last scene, so I will I'll get that done today. Get it through a reader just to double check some storyline issues that I'm thinking I might have. We'll get those fixed first thing in the morning, and I'll get it to Lynne tomorrow. So that'll be 75,000 words. Yeah, the longest by 9,000 words in this series, because nothing ever gets shorter in anything I do.
there's somebody, a Facebook user said, I changed an editor after a few chapters because she was making a lot of small changes in the story. Depends on what you consider small changes. If I'm rewriting your storyline, that's not a good thing. If I'm changing misused words, if I'm rewriting sentences so that they will be more easily understood, if I'm changing you from passive to active voice, those are not changes in your story.
Yeah.
So that would have to be an example, on an example basis before I could speak to that. But I totally, if in fact they were changing your story, that is not something that I agree. I would not accept that, and I would find myself another editor, because that's not my job. My job is to preserve your story, polish it, shine it up, make it the best it can be. But it's the operative word there is your.
Yeah, it is. And passive to active, this is something that if people grew up playing D&D and a lot of games like that, role-playing games, they have a tendency to default to passive voice, because that's how a lot of dungeon masters, game masters ran the game. And this is something that doesn't work in fiction. It's not, you have to use it, let's say, rarely. Don't rely on it all the time. Otherwise, you're dragging your story. It's putting the sea anchor out. And this is a stylistic, a craft thing. But if your editor is changing stuff from passive to active, trust your editor that you're holding your readers back. You're not letting them surge forward.
So
Can you please write out the website for Kate? No, she doesn't have a website. It's Kate Pickford as on Facebook. So
she's not
that's
working in editing anymore. I
no.
talked to her in Edinburgh last year.
No. She's not doing that. But she is making some videos during this crisis to help people out who now might have some time. You might have less time now. We don't know. We're not judging you or making any things. It's just Kate made these available. If you have time and are wondering about your story, you have really bad read through from 1 to 2, go in and take a look at Kate's videos. friend her on Facebook, which of course she's going to hate me now because like she's going to get 1,000 friend requests. But if we can just make those public and share, hey, here's Kate's videos, then take a look, because she goes through very specifically. She's got a very pleasing English accent, and she is. You can see her passion for the story in her videos. So please, I recommend them highly. They're free, made available for 20 books to 50K. Even though she's made them on her private page, they are still very, very informational and will help you significantly.
And we indies work in a strange industry, because coming out of TradPub, where there's a year between releases, you can make as many passes as you like in a book, and it can be darn near perfect. Although my husband says I'm damaged. I mean, I find typos in every book that I read. Literally, I reread the Outlander series and there's plenty of typos in the Outlander series. In addition to choices where I say, why the heck would they leave that there? But that's a whole nother thing. But that doesn't mean that your book should go out with typos in them. That's kind of the classical indie thing. LMBPN is a very special case. I'm not sure if our audience realizes, but we publish a book every business day of the week or more at this point. We've got books scheduled out through, 2021 at this point, but we are booked solid for the next 3 months. So I and my editing team have to really be on the ball as to when we're going to get that book out. So that only allows us a certain amount of time to go through it. So generally, the way my process goes is I will go through, make a first pass on the book, and then I will go through it a second pass using a product called Grammarly, which you can get for free. Grammarly is not the be all and end all, by the way. It is a tool, and I don't agree with it 90% of the time. But what it does do, yes, but what it does do is it gets me right back through the book, and it allows me to catch errors on that second pass. And then I do the spell check with grammar on in Word. By the way, to correct something Craig said earlier, we don't use Google Docs for editing. That's only for the JIT team.
Okay. For the
because you
proofreading.
can't, it's not really an adequate tool for tracking changes or anything like that. If all I were doing were, and my authors go anywhere from, if I've worked with them for a while, they don't want to see the book back, except for Craig. But most of my authors don't want to see the book back. They want me to just make whatever changes I need to make. And that's an incredible and very, very humbling level of trust that they give me on that. To say, fix it, make it good, Lynn, put it out, and then, put it into the publishing staff.
And I get it because I want to learn. I want to learn word choice. I want to learn manipulation of flow and various things. And Lynn does that little extra for me because I want to learn. I want to make the next book better. Always learning to make the next book better.
Confession, I do it because I can't help myself. You would have enjoyed yesterday. I edited a series where different authors write under the pen name. And somebody apparently got an old spec sheet. And so they had the wrong guns. This is a Western.
Oh,
geez. So I had to go whether 58 Remington cap and ball had the same loading process as an 1861 Colt Navy. So you would have had a lot of fun with that. But I have to know that they're different, and I have to go look it up on the internet to see what the loading process is. And I have to know that those guns, I have to care that they used the wrong guns in this book. And since it's a continuity issue, continuity is incredibly important, and your readers will pick it up.
So let's talk style sheet. So you contract with a new author, and they said, hey, this is at least a trilogy. So how do we make sure that with this first book, we develop a style sheet that we both can use to move forward to improve on books 2 and 3?
What you're calling a style sheet, I would call a canon.
Okay.
So I'm going to list the important people, places, and things that come up in the book, how I capitalize them, what the plural is, especially because some authors whose names start with CM, but we won't discuss, have a penchant for not using S's for the plurals, which causes problems in his dialogue, but we can't convince him of that. So anyway, or in his flow, as I should say, not his dialogue. It is 7:00 in the morning here. So, and I normally work all night, by the way. I'm a complete night owl. So anyway, so that was what I would call a canon. And I started that, for example, in your Metal Legion series. It was extremely
Yeah.
important for me to know which mech was which, who was the pilot, who was the monkey, who was the wrench, all sorts of things.
And that saved
So
me in the last book. I actually got those backwards. I'd gone back to find out who was the monkey, who was the wrench, and I got them asked backwards. And Lynn saved me on that one, and the JIT team saved me.
yes, the JIT. I was going to say, honest to God, darling, it wasn't me. It was the JIT team. So, and that's because I am so used to you being absolutely correct that I did not change it. So I thought, okay,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
see.
It's
What's
different.
this question?
Okay, hang on just a second. We got Regency Romance, where passive voice. It depends on the flow of the genre. All the genres I write in: action, adventure, thriller, science fiction, even some fantasy. You want active voice. Regency Romance, if passive voice. Now this goes to knowing your genre. If you've read 100 books in the genre and they all use first person and passive, that's what you use to not shock your readers as they're trying to get into you as an author. But I tell you what, active voice, it just keeps that action moving forward. And action doesn't necessarily have to be somebody pulling a gun and shooting. That's not it at all. It's an engagement. It's somebody standing up to somebody else in dialogue. I don't believe that. Oh, now you've got action because you've got tension in the scene, and you can keep moving and moving forward. And I'm a big fan of active voice now, when passive seem more natural, because that's what I grew up with in the D&D world, and it was holding me back.
Let's also say that there's a difference between the narrator in being in passive voice and the characters speaking in
Yeah.
passive voice. And let's talk about the characters for a moment. One of the things I find myself changing for an author is the way, if all of a sudden a very erudite character is speaking in street slang, I will, if you, depending on who I'm editing for, either change it or recommend that they change it, because in general that person would not do that. Robert Heinlein, for example, for those of us who grew up reading Heinlein, all of his characters spoke in exactly the same way. They used the same
Yeah.
words.
Yes,
There,
they did.
yes, my co-editor and I noticed that there is a flavor du jour. One of the flavors du jour is people peppering things these days. What is it that you want? Instead of saying, what do you want? What is it that you want? And every single character says that. Well, you know what? No, they don't, because people don't generally speak that way.
Yeah, in
So,
dialogue. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So one of the things you'll see is us making changes to keep your character consistent, because you've just written a whole soliloquy or something by a street slang character, and you kind of forget when you go into your erudite character.
And all of my editors have been able to pick that up when I've gone out to made all the characters sound like one character. And I did have to rewrite significant sections of one of the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles because I had done that. I made them all sound like Shar instead of the various characters with their different personalities. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did go back in and change a shitload of dialogue. I'm swearing. Sorry.
Let's see. What do we have here?
New adult, and this is know your genre. There's a lot of first person stuff out there. Survivalist, post apocalyptic is typical science fiction, third person omni. However, when you get in towards survivalist and those kinds of subgenres of post apocalyptic, now you're talking first person. You go, Emily St. John Mandel just published her second book. Her first was Station 11. It was an excellent book, but it post apocalyptic, but it wasn't first person. Now her latest book, I bought it, but I haven't read it yet. I look forward to reading it. The first reviews are like, this isn't Station 11. It's completely different. Well, yeah, it's a different book. She's writing a separate individual. I look forward to reading that one. Have you read her stuff?
No.
Okay.
I am not, because I'm such an avid reader. For the last 3 years that I've been working for LMBPN, honestly, I've mostly read old friends. And the reason is you guys keep me so damn busy that I can't really go off and just read because I will get immersed in the book and involved in the book, and I won't want to work, and that won't do. So I honestly, I just reread the whole Nathan Lowell series with quarter share, half share, etc.
You
Love
bet.
his work.
Nathan's
Love his
Nathan.
dialogue is amazing.
Nathan is good dude.
So
And
and I'll reread series. Anne Bishop is another one I'll reread. So if somebody says, "Have you read so and so lately? They're wonderful," I'll generally say no. I mean, I haven't even read. Who knows what is the one with where the crawdads sing, which is like
yeah,
the book that's everywhere. Even my daughter, who doesn't normally read, is recommending that to me. I haven't even read that one yet
yeah,
because
yeah. I started reading it. It wasn't my speed, so I stopped. But another, you read my End Times Alaska series in the
oh, I
middle
love
of
that.
all this. I mean, the books were only 50, 60,000 words each. Little fellas, they read very, very fast. But those were first person because it was post-apoc, but it was survival slant. So, and those are, I think, are the only books that I read that I wrote first person.
I would caution just from seeing it attempted to be done. Anyone who wants to write in first person present tense has got one hell of a task in front of them.
To keep it
So,
interesting enough that the readers keep reading, it
and
is a
not
significant
stilted,
challenge. Yeah,
and not stilted,
yeah,
and to stop from going into past tense, because let's face it, even in a story like that, things happen in the past tense
yeah.
and people get them mixed up. So if you're going to write something like that, expect your editor to come back with lots of suggestions for you, because you will have slipped. Period. End. Don't you love English tenses?
Yeah, yeah. We have such
Guy
a variety.
Anthony DeMarco, editors should be giving their client recommendation, going through and changing story parts. They should be in, they should, anyway, the question, yes, hello. Um, I agree with you, except if they have specifically given me that direction. So there are people who have given me a direction that say, if this is wrong, fix it for me. So then I will. Otherwise, I will go back to you and say, I don't think you meant this, or why are you blathering on about this particular character? He's killed in the next scene, and it doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't advance the story, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So, but I won't do it for you.
Lynn has free reign on my stories, but Margaret's question is more very very specific. And that goes to flow and things that your beta reading team, your insider team, a developmental editor would work because it goes to exactly to your story and the genre. If you have a thriller, then I think it comes like you have to have action every 11 pages to keep the readers. That's what they're looking for. That's the trend in that genre. Some have more action adventure. You may want to do more. If you're James Patterson, you have some kind of action element on every single page. And this is something that he goes for with his stories. So if you're trying to break into a thriller genre, which I labeled one of my terrorist thriller a thriller, and I didn't have as much action. It was more mental engagement, so it was more psychological thriller, and it was really hammered on flow when I did run it through a developmental editor because it's not. So I'm like, I'm just going to rebrand it. Oh yeah, then it's fine. It's like, fuck man, why didn't you say that in the first place? Instead of, geez, you need to completely rewrite this book to match your one word on your blurb. How about if I just change that one word? Oh yeah, if you do that, then you're fine. Target these kind of readers. All right, thanks.
And in
Thank you.
terms of Margaret's question, it depends. If your readers know that you're setting up a series, you may want to give that much backstory and not have that much action in the first book.
Yeah,
So
it's a craft.
it's situational.
Yeah, and it's once too much when the reader stops reading. So there's your
Yes.
answer, and so you can pepper it in over because we pepper things.
Pepper.
You can pepper it in over the length of the series. You don't want to do any info dumps ever. I am not a fan of an info dump. One new budding sci-fi reader said, "Would you read my book?" And this was a couple years ago, and I had a few minutes. I was like, "Yeah, let me give it a shot. I'll read at least the first chapter." The first 11 pages were info dump. And I'm like, Jesus, you can't publish this. He's like, oh no, it's on pre. It's going to publish next week. I just wanted a quote from you saying it's a great book. I'm like, I won't. I won't do that. I said, this is going to tank. And he published that, but he had the first three books done and published all three. Guess what? Tanked.
Yeah.
The first 11 pages were info dump.
What
I
was
mean,
Mark's thing in Edinburgh? He said you've got to hook them with the first sentence. You've got to get them engaged with the first page, or that's it. They
yep.
aren't reading, and giving backstory on the first page is
Oh
not.
my god, and it read horribly too. It read really, really dull, and oh my god, you can't do that. James Bond movies. Okay, the 25th one has been delayed. It comes out in November now, and with the way James Bond movies all start is this heavy hitting action scene that has nothing to do with the actual story
Right.
that they're gonna tell. But it hooks you. It's like, man, this is a promise that I'm going to get a lot more of these explosions, these running, these fast driving, sexy cars, jets doing weird things, killing people, and just crazy stuff going on. That is the James Bond hook. You look at other books. You start with, so I always my military science fiction. I always start with an action scene, which actually none of this has anything to do with editing. Really, the editing. Let's get back to editing. There's two. We can always talk craft and stories, but an editor. When you find your editor, how do you keep your editor?
You the same way you keep your readers, basically. I mean, there's editors who are just in it for the money, and they're going to keep editing for you no matter what you do.
Yeah,
But your readers aren't going to keep reading no matter what you do. So they're going to not, if your editor is doing you a service, they're going to come back to you possibly, and well, that too. Thank you, Hal J. Green. Yes, you pay them. Um, but you keep it fresh for your readers and for your editor, because then you know you're growing in your craft. I mean, you can find an editor that it's going to pay, that's going to just keep working for you no matter what. But
I,
if you keep let me give you an example. I have a guy that I edit for whose books are doing extremely well. Actually, he was one of the 18 to 20,000 range in his. Thankfully, that was over 2 books instead of one. But he said to me, I don't want to learn how to write. I just want to get the story out there. And I found that to be an appalling statement, because then goes back to something that Guy said, which is your editor should then be your co-writer, because I was literally reshaping every single paragraph. And in fact, we had a
yep.
discussion about that, and he asked me to do that. And I'm perfectly happy to do that when somebody wants me to do it. Kind of fun for me, actually. But that doesn't mean that I should be doing that on a normal basis for any author.
Yeah.
So, that's another one where I'd say go back and read your own work, read it out loud to yourself, and see if it makes any sense to you. And wait enough time that you're not blind to it, because you know why you wrote those words. If you just go back, 4 days, well, if you write as fast as Craig, if you just go back 4 days later, you may still remember why you wrote those words. But if you wait 10 days in between, and hopefully you leave that time in your schedule, because generally Indies are about get the words out there, I need to get paid. But leave yourself enough time to do your work service so that you get the maximum value out of the dollars you're paying your editor. They can see your story, not just your mistakes.
And here would be my recommendations for how do you keep your editor. Treat them like a decent human being. You pay on time. If it's half up front, you pay half up front. If it's half when you finish, pay the instant they say I'm finished, and then get your manuscript. Send them gifts, give them great shout outs, and improve. Because if they're
Gifts?
making the same changes over and over and over,
Gifts?
besides the capitalization and commas, once you've hit your I can't do any better with commas and capitalization, then you agree to disagree. You send them Omaha steaks, and then they keep editing for you, and treat them like a decent human being. This is just like you manage your readership. Hey, thank you for giving a review. Thank you for buying my next book. I appreciate anything you can do for me. One thing I did for my latest book is I canvass the Kurtherian readers. I'm like, hey, Rivka, I need these names: a name of a planet, name of the people of that planet, a prosecutor, a defense counsel, and an AI. And I got so much input, so I don't have to waste time thinking about names, and I get to give them shout outs in the author notes. Hey, thank you, Jay, for these names. Here's the ones I used and why, and thank you, because it's at the end of the book, so it's not a it doesn't reveal anything from the book because I've already read it. But just, hey, shout out, thank you for your help. And the same thing with the editors. Thank you for what you do, and I appreciate it, and I will try to get better. I'll try to make your job easy without putting you out of work, which is why 3,000 to 5,000, because I don't want Lynn to feel like she's out of work because my books are perfect before I send them to her. But I usually have somebody read. I have
That's
my
no fun.
I have my insider team read maybe up to half of it. So I've already had an initial typo check and some general flow issues. So I think my books flow well when I finally send them to Lynn. So that part's okay. She can focus on the story,
Yes.
consistency, and then my foibles, which are capitalization and commas and uh, sentences where I just connect them with a comma without and, where they should be split up or they should be combined when they're not, and just
Or
those kind of
16
things.
forward sentences in a row.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And when you're looking at patterns, and this is something I was taught years ago, is look at this page, back out and look at this page. And she said, what does each paragraph start with? I said, she. Every single paragraph on one page
Yes.
started with she. And
Yes.
she's like, you probably want to change that because it'll look off. Readers won't even know why, but they're going to say, this looks off. It doesn't
Yes.
seem right. And so,
Yes.
yes, I get creative in that changes. And Lynn reins me back in, say it's okay to say she here instead of the woman, or okay, stop getting creative. Um,
Hang on, I
but
want to answer a question that somebody said. Facebook user said, how is it to find an editor who specializes in a particular genre? And Hal said, not as important as you think. I disagree. I would not, for example, edit a romance. It's not my thing. I'm going to do you a technical good job, but I won't be able to help you very much because I don't particularly read. Well, I do. I used to read that genre. I don't read it so much anymore, with my life being the way it is. But I won't do as good a job for you as someone who lives, breathes, and sleeps that genre. So,
I think that's very specific. That you need to have somebody who isn't just technically correct, because, like you said, you've read thousands of science fiction books. You've edited science fiction books, urban fantasy. This is your wheelhouse. So when you look and say a comma doesn't need to be there because this is what the reader, a science fiction reader, will be doing at this point. You can't say that of if romance isn't your thing, or if cozy mysteries aren't your thing, then you may be technically correct, but doing a disservice. And I strongly encourage you to find somebody, an editor, who is familiar with your genre and reads that genre. There's not you can't there is no consistent technical perfection, because I can't believe, for by all that's holy, there are people out there who don't believe you should use the Oxford comma. I can't believe that. It's unfathomable.
the Queen didn't use it when she gave her speech on Sunday in her teleprompts. It was making me insane.
Oh, I know. When I quoted her, I actually added it in because she meant to use it.
She did. And that's why my husband says I'm damaged. I edit as other people's books as I read them. So yes, I am silently judging your grammar, but
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, and not so silently. If you're an insider with Lynn, like we spent 10 minutes on the phone here before we went live, and yes, not so silently. Your comments will be judged. You will be judged.
That's okay. Somebody posted a thing of Henry Cavill, man hunk beefcake, reading The Witcher. And
Yeah,
I must be getting old because all I could think was that I really wanted to edit the book.
yeah. As I said, he's reading it on YouTube. You should jump in and listen. And people are like, who? Somebody's reading. It's like,
It's
I'm
not
just
that. It's just, I'm looking at this gorgeous man thinking about how I want to edit. That book needs something, but on the other hand, he's doing well, so whatever. Not,
and
I'm apparently not his audience.
Yeah, and it looks like we're already up. Dances with Dialogue is live in the files section of 20 Books 50K, the main group. So if you're a YouTube user who are watching this on YouTube and not a member of the group, Sorry, you got to be a member of the group to get that file. Just because we're selfish that way.
And
Join the
somebody who was in Edinburgh would have met Judah. She wrote that. And so our South African editor, who is a delight. And if any of you are coming to 20 books in November, assuming we have a 20 books in November, which I haven't, I don't know why we wouldn't.
we
Um,
are.
oh, good. Well, yeah, I mean, it should be, we should be out of the wave by then. Who knows? Anyway, you will meet Judah there. So
Yes, great. Judah's coming to, and we got to have that. We have so many commitments from cover artists overseas. Christian Bentlon coming from the Philippines, Amalia coming from Romania. We have Tom Edwards coming from the UK. We have such a huge presence. This will be the single biggest gathering of cover artists specifically for indies ever. So if you're looking for this stuff, and we've invited these folks, these good people, to come and share with you their techniques and what they're doing. Gene Malika is coming, and he's bringing his studio. He's doing an hour-and-a-half session on how to shoot live models for your covers. And the cover artists will have a separate table outside by registration. Well, they'll be doing live. They'll be making a cover, and you'll get to see their techniques and how they're doing it, how they're shaping, and be able to ask questions without interrupting if they're in a flow, because you never want to interrupt an artist during their flow time. So all of this good stuff. We will have a few editors like Judah, like Lynn. We have John Ashmore is moderating a beta reader / proofreader panel where
that will be awesome. He's
these
amazing.
are folks who are not authors. They are only beta readers, proofreaders. They just so happen to be all LMBPN folks, which is okay because it's a method. But a lot of authors will have never interacted with people who proofread, maybe not for a living, but a couple thousand hours a year as professional proofreaders, beta readers. How do you work with them, and what do you do? And this is you treat them like decent human beings, and you make them partners on your journey, and you listen to them when they give you advice, which is the same with your editor. If you continuously blow your editor off, like they change something, or you're having a conversation, they make comments on your text, you just say, hey, here's your money, and you never talk back with them like, hey, okay, I like this. I didn't like the way this was shaped or came up, so I didn't accept those changes, whatever it is. Have a dialogue and make them understand what you're seeing. They'll make you understand what they're seeing, and especially from the reader and editor's viewpoint. So everybody does better. As long as you're trying to do better, people are willing to help you if you listen to them and are trying to do better. Now, this goes back to make sure you have the right editor in the first place, because if their idea of better isn't better, then you need to find a new editor.
True, but what you said something that really resonated with me. I said something once about you do comma I correct your comma splices, you correct them back, or sometimes but sometimes you'll look at them and we'll come up with something that's better than either of us envisioned because of we questioned what each other did.
And
so that's a great relationship to me.
I like that back and forth too, because I'm like, okay, you're pissing me off, but let me just change it so there can be no questions. Because if you have a question, I disagree, and I change it, and you still have a question, then we need to reshape that scene, even if that scene is only one sentence, into something that everybody can accept. And this is hugely powerful for your story, for your book, and for your writing style.
Yes. And thank you, Facebook user, for being here. And Lynn, love you.
Yeah, and who isn't excited for 20 Books Vegas right now? We are way good to go, because the world better be turning by November, for Christ's sake. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we got really big problems. I'll make a decision in July. If for some reason we can't hold the show, like all of Vegas has gone under and become a sinkhole, then hey, we'll refund everybody's money come July.
What's that
Declare
Mila Jovovich thing where they actually had a whole movie filmed in Vegas where it was covered in sand and things?
that's no, we're not going to do that. Cherry 3000 is what you're thinking about. A most excellent post-apocalyptic movie, Cherry 3000. Go find it on Netflix and watch it as soon as we're done, which is any minute now.
Yes.
Cherry 3000.
No, it wasn't. This was one of the final what
Fifth Element.
all of her movies are final something.
Fifth
Um,
Element.
no, it's not Fifth Element. This was her Mad Max series.
Oh, geez.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
that one. So
But so Vegas, 20 July, we'll make a final, and it'll probably be way good. We'll probably be forward. We'll probably already have our contract signed for moving to the Strip come 2021, 2022. So we'll still be moving forward. Things may change. Yeah, no handshakes. The chairs won't be right on top of each other, so we may separate it out and not be able to fit as many people in one session as we were before. But we'll adjust as we need to, and we'll make it work. And it'll be a great time. We'll network. We'll talk. We'll share, and then we'll record and share that with the broader world. So everybody wins. So from
it's
the
an
blue
amazing conference.
screen,
If you haven't been, you should.
and oh, for those who haven't been and are sitting there saying, "Oh crap, I'm on the wait list." Well, guess what? We've had a few people pull out, needless to say, because of COVID-19 and getting unemployed, and all of a sudden it's like I have no extra money, and I know I won't have it by November. So they got refunded. We have seats opening up. We'll have another round of new signups coming probably as soon as we know that the show's going to go, like end of June ish. And so you'll have an opportunity to hopefully get a ticket, get a seat if you want one. Um, so so understand that 20 bucks to 50K. It's a great place to be. And coming to you live from the blue screen, oh death, is Lynne Stiegler talking about editing. And what is today? Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tomorrow we have Elena Johnson coming on to talk contemporary romance and her success, and also Western romance, which is a budding genre. You want a hot genre? Stay out of Elena Johnson's genre and go find a different one. But Western romance, a lot of opportunity there for the good stories. What does a good story in Western romance look like? Tune in tomorrow. Same bat station, same bat time, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation with Elena, and we'll be able to see her, unlike Lynne, and move on. Any final words, Lynne?
I have no final words. Just you can find me in Facebook. You can find me in 20 Books. If you have any questions for me, feel free to shoot them at me, and I'll be happy to interact with you.
Thanks, everybody. You have a great day.